Good afternoon. This is Curt Kusel, and we're doing the mini interview on social psychology and one of the principles related to that. So, thank you, Phil, for agreeing to do this. Phil's a friend of mine here at college and has agreed to an impromptu mini interview. So, thank you again. So, it'll only be about 10 or 15 minutes, and it's up to you. Okay, first of all, in social psychology, I study how we influence others and how others influence us. Okay. In this interview, I want to talk about how others influence us. Now, there's intentional influence and non-intentional influence, and we're going to talk about unintentional influence, specifically how others unintentionally influence us or even change our behaviors or our thoughts about something that we're trying to do without trying to do so. So they're not even aware that they're doing it, and we might not be aware that it's happening to us. It's very common and one of the most basic forms of social influence. One such form of unintentional social influence is called emotional contagion. And have you ever caught somebody's emotion or smiled when another group of people were smiling?
Like the whole thing when one person starts laughing.
Yes. Yeah. Somebody walks into a room and they're just had this the best day of their life, and now without
I'd have to
knowing.
say yes, because there's been many times that usually on the positive side, probably on the negative side too, where people come in smiling and it brightens your day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes then again, like boss or, oh, hey, better yet, use the driving analogy. How somebody just being bad on the road, just contagion,
Makes
driving hostile, makes you angry because they include you on their daily trip of hostility.
all right. Well, this occurs when a mood or emotion or even a thought spreads from one person to another. Well, were you aware of this phenomenon before we talked about it? I mean, is this something that you consciously knew?
Had I had a formal training that said, hey, this is an actual thing, I'd say no. Have I realized it?
Yeah.
That people can affect your own behavior.
And that you were being affected by other people's behaviors?
Yes,
or moods?
that I've noticed.
Okay.
Hadn't put
Okay.
much thought into it.
And that in those situations you mentioned earlier, those are the ones you kind of pick that up. Okay. One of the things that cause that are mirror neurons. Have you heard of them?
Can't say that I have.
Okay. Mirror neurons are a real neuron in the brain that sole job is to mimic what we see in other people. And it does that so for two reasons. One, we gain information from people based on their moods and stuff. So we internalize that. We know where we're trying to come up with where they're coming from, so we could gauge what's really happening. And we could also put ourselves in their shoes. It's a core element of empathy. So those are the two main reasons that we do something like that. But they're not automatic. They don't always occur. There are situations where we could even have the opposite reaction to somebody. So when we see somebody happy, we get mad or sad, and vice versa. Now that sounds unusual, but that person who walked into the room and they were thrilled to death, had the best day, and you caught that. Okay, that's one thing we were talking about. The other thing is, what if you're at a football game and people around you are rooting for the other team and the other team wins? Now, are you swept away with all that?
No, because I don't care for football.
or European football, maybe basketball, or whatever you have there. Okay. Well, it happens, and it's actually counter cognition that leads us down that path to an opposite reaction. So obviously these mirror neurons try to, they see what's going on and they're trying to react. There's also connections to our brain. So our brain is interpreting what we're seeing. At the same time, our mirror neurons are trying to work.
Do people react with mirror neurons, as in like when somebody maybe takes a drink, it makes you think, oh, hey, I want to take a drink too. Or somebody maybe sits down in a certain way, crosses their legs. For some reason, sometimes you see other people start to cross their legs.
It's everywhere. And when somebody yawns, somebody else yawns. You ever say hi to somebody across the room and give them a big smile because you thought you knew them, and they do the same back without? So it is automatic, but the brain the cognition is definitely involved in that, saying, how am I interpreting what they're saying? Maybe I should check that somehow and make a different meaning out of that. So so that obviously takes place, and you've already come up with a couple of examples of where that takes place. There are things that impact that, though. That phenomenon where we're mimicking to some degree, or we're swept away with the feelings of smiling or being sad because somebody else is sad. And that has to do with research has shown that if a similarity between you and the other person actually impacts that. So if they're similar to you, you are more apt to follow suit than if you see them as different than you. And they've done experiments where they've had people point out the differences of that person and then see what happens. And then they pointed out the similarities they have with that person, and they did in random studies. And those people that found them thinking about or primed to be thinking about similarities were happier when they were happier and sadder when they were sadder than the people that saw differences. So it's really interesting. And just to finalize here, the things that intentionally are done to influence people is conformity, following norms, the pressure to follow norms, compliance, and that is typically seen, although it's in a lot of other cases, in salesmen. Foot in the door, lowballing the price. Those are techniques that are used to get to yes. And that's how we look at that. And obedience is simply what it says, and that's following orders or you think you're following orders. So that's where that ends. Any comments?
Oh no, I'm just trying to think of things along the lines of what you're talking about. Nothing comes to mind.
It's interesting information to have.
As you talk about it, I started wondering, okay, if we have a positive mirror effect, what triggers that? And it's like, okay, what is it that triggers the negative? Is it that people see that, oh, you're different, hey, you're smiling, well, that makes me, you're different from me, but you're smiling, that makes me unhappy? It's a really basic thing, but
we need to do some research. So my take on this is that even reading this and being familiar with the material, until doing this, the prevalence of this and how pervasive it is in everything and how it could be used. I think people who could, like anything, could be misused to manipulate. And there's probably some of that going on.
Could the negative aspect, the negative event that happens with the mirroring, could that, depending on a person's personality, be what triggers people to maybe punk another person, play a jokes on them?
What do you mean?
Gosh, how am I thinking? You describe the differences and stuff.
Right.
And it's like, okay, somebody with the similarities or people who end up smiling. people with the differences end up frowning. I'm wondering if the people who end up having the differences
No, they
instead of the mirroring,
weren't necessarily
if maybe
frowning. They just weren't reacting
They weren't
on the
reacting.
same level.
but I'm wondering if maybe there is like a, you know, for some people who might end up acting on the opposite effect. It's like what triggers them to maybe do something, because I guess there's
Yeah.
people who play practical jokes on people they like, and then there's people who play practical jokes on people they don't like. And
For sure.
I was like wondering, some of this was like make me start wondering, okay, this mirror gene, what did you call it?
Mirror neuron.
Mirror neuron. If we have a positive thing, positive joke. If you have a negative reaction, could it be something that triggers maybe the negative aspect of the joke?
I definitely believe that comedians, for example, or even me on occasion, where something really nice happens, but you say it with a real sad face and stuff like that, and you get people to sympathize with you, and you say, "Just kidding," or "No, it was really good," or something like that. So yeah, you can get people to follow along. It's really an amazing thing. But I didn't really look at that aspect of it until we did this.
Just my brain starts churning when but me, I watch a lot of science type shows, so
Yeah.
things that deal with DNA, how people are different, how the brain ends up working. Although it's not my research field, it is background for like political science and trying to understand why people in the world act the way
Well,
they
I
do.
think on a macro level, I mean, you and I know we look at humans as very much alike, more so than different. And I think people with the view that we're all basically the same, treat in a micro level with friends and stuff like that a lot better than people who see big differences between all the races, the socioeconomic statuses. They're different people. They can be treated differently. You know how that goes. It's a low road to travel. But I appreciate the time. Thank you.
You're welcome. 12 minutes.